Now I have a problem. As you see around us, it's actually springtime. We're actually in May when this video is supposed to be posted, probably around January, right after the Toronto Regionals. Safe to say, it's quite late. Fortunately, this video is still coming out. We had some really good takes throughout this video, and I think that documenting the TCG history for Pokemon is really important, so that's why it's coming out. And I know what you're thinking. Who could possibly be in this video that could be part of the documentation process? Someone who's notable, probably is a pro player, and is just overall really good at the game. It's definitely not me. So who is it?
Hi, my name is Jackson Ford. I have been playing the Pokemon trading card game for 14 years. Some of my most highlighted accomplishments are winning NAIC in 2018 as a senior, top 8 at the Latin America International Championships in November, and then I've gotten top 32 at Toronto Regionals both last year and now this year.
And I'm David, random TCG player, and this is To The Top. One of the things that we touch on for day one is that we usually kind of see the main suspects for the regionals kind of show their heads in the playstyles. You have your Regidragos, you have your Charizards. The new recent edition of Golden Go has been having a lot of players play that as well. And you have your Miraidon and Raging Bolt. But one of the new decks has been Cloth, a new deck that's kind of been powerhousing its way through the leaderboard and making its way onto this region. Cloth is great. Cloth is actually really good. Now, if you didn't know, Cloth is a recent deck that's been showing popularity throughout a lot of the regionals in this time. This deck has shown a lot of strong showings. Recently just shown in one of the regionals where a lot of them converted into day 2, and now in Toronto, a lot of them have been playing it as a new aggressive strategy. Now, what made this deck so good? So Cloth actually has been popular since last format. The Cloth deck runs around with this low crustacean, Cloth. And what he does is that when it has a special condition on it, like it's burnt or it's poison, it is able to swing a lot more onto the opponents, getting some really aggressive kills on the very first turn. Pair this with other Pokemon like Hisuian Electrode, where it does more damage when there's more special conditionals on it. Cloth back then was a really strong rogue deck that people had played. Nowadays, the Cloth deck looks completely different to what it once was, and that's due to this little guy, Oranguru. Oranguru utilizes its ability to get a bunch of tools from your deck into your hands. There's a lot of tools that can be used in the Cloth deck to make the Cloth do a lot more damage, like the Ancient Booster Capsule that makes the Brute Bonnet poison you, and the Binding Mochi that lets poison Pokemon do more damage, which means Cloth is swinging for a lot more. Pair Oranguru with Latias, the new Pekka-Run EX, the Pekka-Run itself, Terapagos, and the new aspect that they use, Precious Trolley, they're effectively able to put out all the tools they need within one big swing. They'll have a small board with 2 Pokemon, they'll use their Forest Seal Stone, and there, boom. A bunch of Pokemon are on their field and they're ready to attack.
Between turns,
yep.
correct, because
there we go.
So it's just going to be the pass and actually choosing to not play the switch cart in this spot, holding on to that. I mean, with how things stand, it doesn't, as you said, make a huge difference in terms of winning.
Day 2 at Toronto showed some pretty normal results, with Regidrago and Charizard being at the top of the list. We also had some new archetype styles creeping up the list, like Dragapult, Iron Thorns, Gardevoir, Lugia, and... wait a minute. What's that? Snorlax? What is that doing there? As a tale as old as time, control deck strategies have always been a part of the trading card game experience. It's always been a strategy where its goal is to slow down the game completely and slowly chip away at your opponent. Within Yu-Gi-Oh! There was decks like Mystic Mine, which was used to completely shut off deck strategies. And in Magic, there's decks like Blue-White Control, which has been notorious for being the control strategy for people to play. In Pokemon, it's no different, and one of the decks that is notorious for being a control deck strategy is Snorlax. That's because of his ability, Block. The ability makes it unable for the Pokemon to move from the active position to the bench position. But why does that matter in general? Within Pokemon, instead of having just attacking Pokemon within your deck, you also have supporting Pokemon. Pokemon that are there to just help you enable your game strategy and make you play a lot better. Things like Pidgeot, which lets you search any card you want during your turn, or Rotom, which lets you draw more cards so you can play more, or even Fezandipity, where in other deck strategies, it lets you draw and recover from positions where your Pokemon is knocked out. These strategies are kind of necessary for every deck, and that's why every deck kind of has this choke point for Snorlax. Snorlax has the ability, with the help of its items and supporters, to grab any of those Pokemon that you can't really attack with or are stuck with in a sense and keep them in the active spot. Snorlax kind of makes it so that these Pokemon that are supposed to enable you and help you now become a liability. With these liabilities now in your deck, the Snorlax player tries to trap these Pokemon into the active position, making you unable to attack and therefore not letting you progress the game further. Once they're able to establish that, they slowly chip away from your resources until you hit a deck out.
Yeah, so I know Snorlax was the third most popular deck in Toronto. I still kind of take the opinion that like the no Rotom version of the deck kind of just sucks. Like I know that it has converted, but if you talk to people like the highest level, they like pretty consistently think that Regidrago beats that deck. Like I think Charizard beats that deck. I played against one of these Snorlaxes with like the Klefkis and all that in day 2, and I stomped them. If I was to play Snorlax, I would still kind of just play like the Rotom version with a bunch of missed energies. It felt like the best way to beat Regidrago. And if you're not beating Regidrago with that deck, I just don't think it's worth playing. But the good thing about Snorlax is that you take advantage of really bad players. Really bad players just consistently throw games into you. And in a 2,000 plus tournament, you have a lot of people that just don't really know what they're doing against Snorlax, and that will always be the case for control decks. So I pretty much always expect to see control have a reasonably good conversion rate as long as good people are playing it. I believe Cyrus is the creator of like the list that everyone played, and Cyrus has like a group of like 20 people that will pretty much play whatever deck they have built. So I think it's like kind of a byproduct of the fact that a group of pretty established players is playing it, right? I think Cyrus built like the Cornerstone Noivern deck for Baltimore as well, and there was like a bunch of people that day 2 with that one as well. So I'm not really too surprised to see that happen again for a different control archetype. Oh, they always have really unique takes on the deck too. Like this one was really interesting because it was playing like Enriched Energy and Pidgeot V, which is much different than a lot of the other lists, right? Like you had the Rotom list, you had the non-Rotom list, and then within the non-Rotom list, you had this Enriched Energy like sub-archetype, which was kind of cool because, I mean, you just drew a lot more cards, which was, I think, one of the biggest weaknesses of the deck.
One thing you can notice from day 1 to day 2 of the Toronto Regionals is the lack of Miraidon. This deck had a large percentage of players playing it on day 1, but they were unable to convert it into day 2. On the flip side, there was another deck that was able to show itself within the day 2 experience, and that was Lugia, a deck that didn't seem a lot of play within the last few regionals, but within this one, it was able to kind of be able to convert really well compared to its counterpart. As I wasn't able to make it in day 2, I wasn't able to observe this phenomenon happen in firsthand, but I did see a lot within day 1, a lot of Miraidons kind of dying out within their runs. So Jackson, what do you think that is?
Yeah, so I mean, we talked on it a little bit earlier, but Blocklock's like the third most played deck in day 2. And so the problem is kind of like I touched on earlier, where Regidrago just isn't enough of the meta for Miraidon to consistently succeed. In order for Miraidon to succeed, you have to hit a very like select few matchups that you are like very favored into. Lugia is one of those, as we talked about. Charizard is one of those. Or sorry, not Charizard. Regidrago is one of those. But you do have like kind of like and bad matchups, right? Like none of your matchups are completely unfavored, but matchups like Charizard, matchups like Cloth are not fantastic. I'm not even really too sure how good the Gardevoir matchup is because you kind of just get folded if they push Klefki. So I think that Miraidon succeeds if Regidrago has a higher meta share percentage. And as for Lugia feels like it still has that good Regidrago matchup, but its matchups across the rest of the board are also just like they're a little bit better, right? With Miraidon, you struggle versus Cloth and Snorlax. With Lugia, you take favored matchups into both of those. So Lugia just has a bit of a better matchup spread overall, while still beating Regidrago. That argument changes if Regidrago players start to play Temple Sinnoh, but most Regidrago players on this event were not playing Temple Sinnoh. Cal Connor won with Temple Sinnoh, but if I remember correctly, none of the other top 8 lists did play Temple Sinnoh, which meant that if you were a Lugia player in that field, you had a really good chance of making a deep run.
Now, to no one's surprise, after day 1 and day 2, Regidrago has shown a really strong performance throughout the whole event. And not just this event. In practically every regionals from Worlds till now, this deck has been dominating every single format, with its strong attackers, with its strong utility, and with its overall capability of just doing anything it needs to do in order to get that victory. Everyone overall has a general idea of how the deck should be played, so the deck list hasn't changed too much. The only thing that's changed is people's development and capabilities with them playing it. This deck has a very heavy emphasis on the pilot. It really depends on how the pilot plays in order to perform really well. So regardless of deck list, as long as the pilot plays the deck perfectly or close to perfect, you can kind of be able to perform exactly how you want to and to do well in these performances. But forget my thoughts. Let's see what Jackson thinks about Regidrago overall.
Yeah, I mean, Regidrago, kind of like you said, has a lot of agency. I kind of feel like if you are really, really good at the game, and specifically really good at Regidrago, then it's just like the only deck you should be considering for a tournament. Like even from my perspective, I consider Regidrago to be the only deck that I would bring to regional outside of Charizard. Regidrago kind of just has it all, right? Whenever you have an attacker that, you know, copies 5 different attackers that are all really, really strong in their own regard, the deck's just like kind of bound to be really good. If you look at its like individual attackers, pretty much all of its individual attackers could make up its own archetype, right? Like you can play Dragapult. You used to play Gudra on its own, right? If Kyurem was an attack you could consistently use, then you would play a Kyurem archetype, right? The attacks individually are just also broken, so you put like every single broken attack in the game, and then you put it with like probably like the second best V-Star power in the game. And, you know, pretty much no matter how clunky or inconsistent the engine is, like as long as you can pull it off with decent, you know, percentages, you're going to be, you know, just a big force to be reckoned with. And so Regidrago has a big advantage because it's only 15% of the meta. I actually have no idea why this deck isn't like 30% of the meta, but it works towards its favor because no one can reliably play a deck like Raging Bolt or Miraidon or War and Moon to an event because there's just so many decks in the format that aren't Regidrago. So if Regidrago is a 30% deck, the deck becomes way worse because now people just catch on and just start playing Raging Bolt. And now your matchup spread looks a lot worse. But as long as it's 15%, you're going to have enough people just playing decks like Charizard, playing decks like Gardevoir, where you're very, very favored. And with so much agency and so many different options, you're just bound to have, you know, a really good odds of making a far tournament run.
Even though the top 8 was predominantly Regidrago, there was some new decks in there like the Pidgeot Control, and the decks we saw in day 1 and in day 2 kind of pop its head to show that the game is still innovating and changing despite its deck dominance. To no one's surprise, it was a Regidrago finals against Cal Connor and Callie White, but it was a very exciting one at that, making it 3 games with a nerve-wracking ending and showing us why Regidrago could be a little bit more fun with their new additions. Cal Connor tried a new list that had the Executor, and in its final moments, it was able to show us a really stellar performance of it and a really flashy ending, making one of the most exciting endings to a Pokemon TCG game.
Be part of all these big flipping moments.
Yeah.
And you see Callie's, he's in the tank here. He's thinking, do I go for this? I have such an advantage. Could my greediness get me over this way? Are we going to see this? We're going to see
Swinging
speed.
Oh my God.
Tails. Calvin will win the game. Heads, a whole new narrative. What's the flip? Tails. Knocks out the sensitivity. Cal Connor on the coin flip wins the Toronto Regional Championships.
What did we just watch?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm actually very excited for both Prismatic and Rotation. I don't think Prismatic changes too much. I think that Gardevoir and Dragapult are probably the 2 decks that end up using Voodoo really well. Voodoo kind of has a condition where it's like you have to get Voodoo in the active pretty early for it to be a good card. And you also need to kind of set up behind it for it to be a good card. So the 2 decks in the format that kind of take advantage of that condition are Dragapult and Gardevoir. You know, they have the stage 1s like Hurlia and Dracloak. They can sit behind and set up, make good progress on their board. Decks like Goldango would also be good users of it, but you kind of have to play. I believe that the 50 HP Gimmighoul has a 1-word free cost. Like I think you need to have like the 1-word free cost Gimmighoul, or else you can't get into it. But generally speaking, I don't think too much is going to change outside of that. I'm pretty happy to see that Regidrago will have a smaller meta share. makes, again, for a more diverse meta. I think Gardevoir is by far the best deck into this new format. We've already seen that Gardevoir's kind of back on the rise, but with the addition of Badoo, you turn your Regidrago matchup into a favored matchup. You probably turn your Charizard matchup into a favored matchup. And, those were the only two decks that were like kind of shaky. You kind of stomp everything else in the format. So if Badoo can implement a good Gardevoir list that takes advantage of those two matchups, I see no reason why it won't be the deck to beat.
Editor David here, just to note that this event was before Prismatic Evolutions, and as you can see, we were right. Regidrago has shown a lot less percentages in terms of play due to Badoo locking a lot of the cards that allow it to perform. Things like Energy Switch and things like that make the deck really slow compared to the other cards in the metagame. There has been some really strong performances with certain players doing well with Regidrago still, but I think that's few and far between, and it does more with the pilot than with the deck. I still think the deck could be really good, the only problem just being Badoo. If Regidrago had a way to deal with Badoo, then no doubt this deck would be the best deck of the format, reaching its close, but unfortunately this may be one of the last times we see the funny little guy. Thankfully, in my hometown regionals, it showed us up to be a really exciting weekend, and hopefully we'll see you all there in the next one.
As Canadian Pokemon players, Toronto Regionals just has a lot of pride for pretty much everyone, right? A lot of people state that like if they were to win one Regionals, they would want to win in Toronto. And that's just kind of a testament to how important these Canadian Regionals are, and specifically Toronto for a lot of reasons too. We only get 2 Canadian Regionals a year. We get Toronto and we get Vancouver. So playing on home turf isn't really something that comes by often, and winning with, the home turf crowd is a very, very big accomplishment. So Toronto Regionals is just a fantastic event to attend if you are a Canadian Pokemon player. Even if you don't play very often or you're just looking to pick up the game, I would highly recommend at least checking out the scene, because it is just a fantastic and very welcoming community, specifically within the greater Toronto area.
Thanks for enjoying the video. Hopefully you got something out of it, and if not, again, sorry for it being this late. Special shout outs to Jackson Ford. He was a really big help going in towards this video and just being a big help overall. As noted, he was one of the players that actually coached me through this Toronto Regionals run, and I couldn't have had this run without him, for sure. Even though the run wasn't that great, I was able to do a run that I'm quite proud of within the span of time that I was able to learn. So special shout outs to him. Be sure to look at his Metafy for coaching. I believe he's doing a new YouTube content very soon, so be on the lookout for that. As towards the next videos, I already have all the recording down, so I just have to edit it. It's just a little harder just because of my new schedule, but hopefully it comes out really soon. One final thing, like Jackson said, I really hope that this kind of motivates you or gives you a little bit of insight of what Toronto TCG is all about. Not just in Pokemon, I feel like Toronto's really a hub space for a lot of these games for people to enjoy, and hopefully I see you sometime in these locals. Bye.